Now let's talk European Cup action. Leinster, jeez, imperious, nilled Glasgow on Friday night. They are nailed on favourites to win the competition. They are in the best form. They have a lot of heartbreaks in their past. It feels like now or never. How many Rory McIlroy parallels do I have to draw for you here, people? They play Northampton in the semi-final. That will be the Bank Holiday May weekend, the 3rd on the Saturday, 5:30 at the Aviva, not Croke Park this year. Northampton gave them a scare last year at the Aviva. Elsewhere, Munster bow out. They lose in Bordeaux. It was one French adventure too far. Connacht, we have to talk about you. Not for good reasons. Incredible frustration. It looks like an epic scoreline. Racing 92-43 to 40 winners, but Racing were down to 14 men after just 13 minutes. Connacht squandered a 21 points to 5 lead in the first half, so it's not good, and the URC table not much better as they go to South Africa. Elsewhere, the Irish women beaten by England in Cork. Scoreline of 5-49 doesn't look as interesting as it was, because for the first half hour Ireland were excellent, and Amy Lee Costigan put Ireland 5-0 up after half an hour. 5-0 up against England. Not sure the last time that has happened. But they poked the bear a touch. England responded 6 minutes later and kept responding and won out well with 7 tries. As ever, Energia, proud sponsors of the men's and women's national teams. They are also committed to supporters of grassroots Irish rugby. They're excited for the Energia AIL finals doubleheader. That will be April 27th at the Aviva. In the women's division, Railway Union UL Bohemian battling it out to become 2025 champions. The men's pairings TBC. The podcast in association with Energia. From grassroots to greatness. Okay, happy to say Rory O'Connor here in studio. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
Rory, Ian Madigan, hi Ian, texted last night somewhere around Amen Corner to say, I don't think I'll have the energy to come on tomorrow. So that kind of an evening for us last night.
Oh, it was just incredible, wasn't it? Yeah. I've followed Rory for so long, and I watch the golf religiously on a Sunday night, and it kind of lets me kind of I suppose just down tools for 4 or 5 hours and decompress and then lead into another week. And yeah, just being with them for the good and the bad, and just to see that emotion at the end, it was really spectacular. Like, it was
not since France 2015 World Cup have I seen emotion like that.
Rory was in on the Monday, Ian, wasn't he?
Sorry?
Rory was in the Monday after that game, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was when Lukey Fitz hit his famous drive.
Yeah. They say that messed with Rory's head for about 5 years afterwards. Just seeing that scrambled him, you know.
The driver was never the same as well, I'd imagine.
But you would, I think what you would really appreciate as a goal kicker is, you know, you could play nervous, but it's a sport of continuous motion. You're in a game, you get a flow, but you would understand pulling the trigger. That is what separates golf from so many sports. Pulling the trigger when you're nervous, that's a lot. And it got to him last night. I mean, he was so nervy at times.
Yeah, he was. And like, you can see how it played out. He got off to that kind of nervy start, and then he settled down because he had to get back into, he was in a real battle straight away with DeChambeau. And then, like, the key moment in that backline when he hits that shot, where like he only has one shot to hit if he wants to take it on the green. But if you want to look at the parallels, that's just total commitment. You know, a 55-meter kick where you're not necessarily thinking about technique. You're just thinking, right, this is feel. I've hit shots like this at times, but I've just got to trust my instincts and roll with this. And it was Tiger-esque between that shot and the one over the trees that he got to, I think 5 feet. It was just Master Sunday at its very best. But it was incredible. Like,
incredible. Well, in his spare time, Padraig Harrington's pretty much the best analyst in golf, and we've just put out a podcast where he's holding court on everything that happened last night and giving amazing insights. So that is in your feed at your leisure. Padraig Harrington on McIlroy's Grand Slam win last night. Let's talk rugby then. We'll go chronological. Rory, you were at Croke Park. Aviva.
Yeah.
Aviva. It's hard to keep track of these guys. You were at the Aviva on Friday. Jordie Barrett's a joke.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's Jordie Barrett. You know, he's amazing. He's a joke.
I didn't appreciate it. Was the Bristol game where he walked onto the pitch with a group of Irish internationals that I have taken as being some of the best players in the world and looked so much better than them. I found that quite jarring at the time, and every time I've seen him since, I have to say I underestimated how good he was. I knew he was a brilliant rugby player, but I didn't appreciate how good. And being there in the flesh I mean, I'm sure it came across on TV. It was like he was overage. The stuff he was up to, like, and everything he did was, I mean, he knocked on early on, and then he had tried this loud, and it was almost like, just look, just to show I'm human, and now I'm going to go to this level that I've never. It was probably, I wasn't in Christchurch when Carter went next level against the Lions in 2005. I've never seen a rugby player dominate a game in the way that he did on Friday night. Accepting that Glasgow, with the players they were missing, are not a contender for this tournament. They are different to Harlequins. They really gave it everything. They never stopped. I really admired them because they were like, nothing went their way. And then every time they got a break, Barrett was there just to thwart them. I mean, the one where he got back ahead of the fullback, then sidestepped him and booms a kick down. Like everything that happened in Glasgow's favour, he was there to just step in with a choke tackle, to poach on the ground. And then also the triple threat that he gives. We talked to Tommy O'Brien afterwards. He talked about this triple threat that he has. He occupies so much of the defence that he allows Prendergast to thrive. He allows Tommy O'Brien time and space on the edge, and he was brilliant. I'd say Ringrose loves playing alongside him, because I think Ringrose has looked in the last 2 weeks like a player we haven't seen for a couple of years. We've seen a bit of the Ringrose who picked a try from halfway against Claremont and looked like a young Brian O'Driscoll about 7 or 8 years ago. He's allowing the Irish players to express themselves, and they've talked about how he's almost revealed a side to rugby that they've forgotten, because he breaks system. He doesn't always do what the system tells him to do because he's so good. He can see stuff. And then Dan Sheehan talked this week or last week about how he started to look at things and go, do you know what, the right option isn't necessarily the right option. There's space over there. I'm not going to follow the plan. So if that has an impact on the Leinster players, it makes them all better players. And they were already a very good team, already a width of a post away from winning a Champions Cup last year. And then they've dropped him, Orgy Snyman and Rabah Slimani into the mix. I can't see them being stopped. Unless a couple of injuries is all I can see. That was outstanding.
Ian, Barrett.
Yeah, everything what Rod said and more. The big thing for me, the Leinster system really suits him. Like, you can be a player of really high quality and be dropped into a team that doesn't necessarily suit your style of play and not be overly impactful. Aside from the obvious, like, he's quick, he's powerful. His repeat effort and his speed endurance, like Rod mentioned it there, like the chase back when, the game's very much in the balance there. Glasgow scored, they're right back in it. But not only does he like chase back, he then has the speed endurance to turn, motor back to the 22, and then like he rips a spiral like 65 meters. Like, anyone in their right mind there is exhausted. Like, you're just going to a high percentage kick. That's just not in his DNA. But it's how much involvement he gets in a game when he's playing for Leinster, whether it's competing at the breakdown, making tackles, making carries, unlocking the defence with his passing game. That's what he craves. Like, I was doing commentary at the weekend, so I couldn't player cam him as much as I would have liked, but I have player cammed him earlier in the season, and he is just so busy for work. And every action that he makes on a rugby pitch is impactful. Like, the Glasgow number 8 picks off the scrum early in the game, and he's a big, powerful guy, and Barrett hits him off his feet. Like, it was just one of those moments where you go, Leinster are on a going night tonight. And I really felt for Glasgow, because they're coming second in the URC, and they deserve to be second. They're clearly the second best team in the league. The injuries came at the wrong time for them. But they still came with a plan to try and beat Leinster, and they weren't trying to just contain the quality side that they were, and that was a large part of their undoing. But yeah, Barrett for me, I would have been so impressed since he's come in, and Leinster have made some big marquee signings over the years. You think of obviously Rocky Elsom, Issa Nasiwa, and aside from what they bring as an individuals, for me, it's he's lifting everyone else up to his level now. He's demanding standards, whether it's in defence, whether it's pass quality, making guys look at the game a different way. And there was a couple of interesting moments in the game. Like, it was a simple move, but like Josh van der Fleer takes the ball off the back of the line out, and the passing channel is blocked. and he pumps it and then he goes to a basketball pass. You wouldn't see Leinster doing that in previous years. But it's bringing in the likes of James Lowe, Sneeman, Barrett, that are opening guys up, that there's different ways of doing things.
It's kind of like Rocky Elsom for the sheer performances and Brad Thorne for that impact on everybody around him rolled into one here. And like, again, I'm like Rory, I'd underestimated him. I was speaking to him during the year, and it's amazing to listen to the background. Just when you talked about his fitness there, Ian, it just reminded me, he's from a family with 4 brothers, 3 sisters, family of 8, hardworking parents on the farm. And he talked about the extent to which there was competition, obviously, between the brothers. There's Bowden, there's Scott, there's Kane, a professional as well. But he's talking about how even his mum was like so big on fitness. Now, there's probably also a degree of like, you know, four lads and 3 sisters, and just like the madness of a house. But they would all go to school barefoot. That was just the way it was around that time in New Zealand. But she would meet them 3-4 miles at the end of the road from the house every day after school, give them their runners, and get back in the car and say, "I'll see you at home." And they would run home. I mean, there were races here to see who doesn't have to milk the cows at night. You know, so he's got his 10,000 hours in a slightly curious way, but like that base of fitness is just like, as you said, Rory, it looks like he's overage amongst kids here on every level. Franco Smith, the Glasgow head coach, said, "That Leinster side is the greatest club side I've ever seen. I've been coaching since 2007 in the Heineken Cup. Hands down, the greatest by a long shot. Do they play better than Ireland?" He's asked with imperious journalistic instincts. I mean, that's the debate we want to have.
I think he asked himself.
Yeah, he did. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Frank, you're doing our job for us.
Someone had said it last week, so he said I'd heard. I was at the press. He said someone said last week are they better than Ireland? And he paused and
he delivered the line.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. So the greatest club side he has ever seen coaching in this tournament.
Yeah, and like Franco Smith, as he said, you know, he gives his own bit of a CV there, but like he would have coached Benetton or Treviso against Joe Schmidt's Leinster team at their height, and I think I'm right. I think Leo said it actually. They used to pick some of Franco Smith's moves, and so like Franco Smith would be recognised as a really astute rugby coach. And I don't think there have been times where coaches have come into that press room in the Aviva Stadium and they've been quite self-serving in their comments about Leinster's budgets. He wasn't making excuses, Franco Smith. He's quite a straight-laced South African kind of character, and I thought, like, they have to prove it. They have to go and win it. Like it's not like we can say right now they're great. You know, I can't agree with that right now because this team haven't actually won anything, and this team is a very finite thing because Barrett's only there for 6 months. But certainly the personnel they have, it's hard to argue that right now they're not the best team in Europe, and there's nothing in Super Rugby that can match them ever. Well, they've got to go and do it now. They've got to deliver on the promise that they have. They've gone to the market and brought in 3 unbelievable signings, replacing 3 good solid professionals, and they've also then brought in Prendergast for Ross Byrne, which still question marks over his defence, but I think is an upgrade in terms of what Prendergast can do for their attack and the speed at which they attack with him, and also I think, and again he's unheralded and he's quite new on the scene, but I think O'Brien gives them an extra dimension on the right wing as well, which they didn't have last year. Larmour was really solid, you know, he's a really solid operator in the final, but I think O'Brien's speed just gives them an extra little bit of a dimension as well. Their injury profile's really good. They expect to get Ryan back on deck. Ryan Baird missed last weekend. They put in Max Deegan. He scores 2 tries. And what really I think would be a worry to everyone else is the fact that the second team went to South Africa and were so good. This time last year, their knockout round performances weren't that impressive. They were winning, but they weren't impressive. And the B team had basically given up by this time of the season. They'd had the longest pre-season in history. They were losing games to teams they shouldn't have been losing games to. They went to South Africa, got absolutely hockeyed, whereas now the entire operation is pulling in the same direction. He's able to make 6 changes, bring in 3 of the players who impressed in South Africa, and give Diarmuid Mangan a debut off the bench in a European quarter-final, and not miss a beat. In fact, probably go up a level. So they are in such a strong position, and no one else. If you think that they took Toulouse to the wire this time last year, in the final last year, and were better in the second half than Toulouse, and had they nailed the drop goal would have won the game. But that was Toulouse with Dupont giving one of the performances of their lives, and they don't have, like, Toulouse are weaker this year because they've lost Dupont. Bordeaux, I think, are kind of the same as what they were. There's no La Rochelle anymore, and Northampton pushed them close last year. But Northampton, who are, I think, a very good team who will threaten them in certain ways, have lost their two most impactful back five forwards. Yeah. So the field has weakened as they've got stronger. So the Stars have aligned. They've kind of forced the Stars into alignment for them.
Yes. So. Ian, if they don't win the tournament this year, it's a psychological failing.
Yeah, and I'm very confident that Leinster will win this year. One slight concern I'd have is just the run in that they have. You know, it's an advantage in a way, because like you look at that Leinster team that played against Harlequins last week and this week, they had 2 weeks off after the Six Nations because obviously the rest of the squad was touring, and then this week they play Ulster. I'd imagine a lot of the guys who played at the weekend will be rested again, and then you've got the Scarlets before the Northampton game. The Northampton game will be a good match. Like they ran them close last year, but you know they're missing Courtney Laws, Ludlam, but their backline is probably a bit better than what it was last year in the sense that they're a year older. They're and they are a Champions Cup team, as opposed to their performances in the Premiership actually have been poor this year by their usual high standards. But then you've got, like, I think it's Zebra back in the URC, Glasgow, and that would lead into the final. Not exactly a great run in to get battle hardened for what it will be a very attritional match against French opposition. And then you're also throwing in, well, what are they going to come up against? They're going to come up against a very different style to what they are playing against week in, week out. And I think Bordeaux will beat Toulouse in the semi-final on the other side of the draw, just at home in Bordeaux. They're playing well. It'll be a kind of open game. But if it is Bordeaux in the final, they're very much a Harlequins mindset of we'll score. If you score one, we'll score two. They on average score about 30 points in the top 14. They've averaged far higher than that in the Champions Cup. Whereas Leinster pride themselves on defence, and they concede less than 15 points a game on average. So that's where you've very much different styles of play. Bordeaux try and get you on the counter attack. Leinster try and grind you down. So that would be the one concern I would have, but that is the 1%, as opposed to the 99% that Leinster are going to win.
And there should be concerns. It shouldn't be easy. Like, we're talking about winning a European Cup. It's just, from our vantage point as opposed to Leinster's, it looks odds on. But they have to be extremely wary, and anything can happen in sport. Take that as granted. Franco Smith, Leinster, best club side he's seen. But that line, do they play better than Ireland? I.e., would they beat Ireland? Yes, I think so. At the moment, Leinster bulk suppliers, and then throw in Slimani, Orgy Snyman and Jordie Barrett. Would Leinster beat Ireland, Ian? Yeah,
look, we can debate this to the death. The game's never going to happen. But what I would say, you break it down and go, well, all these players are going to be playing on both sides, and then these are the extras. The other provinces have underperformed, and Ireland need them to really step up to be stronger, and we saw that in the Six Nations this year. The other glaringly obvious one is Leinster's defensive system is far superior to Ireland's defensive system. So that would be the team I'd be getting behind off the back of that.
Has that happened before? Would you have said Leinster better than Ireland?
I think better. I think in 2019 when Lancaster, after the 2018 Champions Cup final and the end of the 2018 season, when Sexton and a couple of the senior players went to Joe and said, we want to play a bit more like Lancaster's Leinster, and then Ireland tanked in that Six Nations, and Leinster didn't have a great 2019, but they still got the Champions Cup final. I don't know if they were better, but I suppose the difference is that if Barrett, Slimani and Snyman were available to Ireland, they'd all be in the mix. Now, Slimani may not be an international quality player anymore, but the other two certainly are. Yeah. But I'm writing about this today. Leinster are the only team in Ireland in men's Irish rugby who have stability behind the scenes. Everyone else has either an interim coach or has made a coaching change in the last year. Ireland are on their third interim coach of the year. Munster are on they've got people double jobbing. Their forwards coach wasn't even in Bordeaux for the big game at the weekend because he's working with the Ireland women's team. Their head coach is also their director of rugby operations. Ulster changed their defence coach midway through the season. Connacht's head coach is on sick leave. There's huge speculation about whether he'll be around next season. We know that they're going to have new coaches next year. Their scrum coach is their head coach at the moment. I was struck by it. It was only a couple of weeks ago in McHale Park when I was writing a reaction piece, and I was going, "What's Cully Tucker's title?" And then I said, "What's Ian Costello's title?" And I was like, "Why is there so many interim coaches in Irish rugby right now? Why has no one got the stability?" And the one operation that has stability and continuity of coaches through the season and had a good pre-season together is Leinster, and they also have, arguably one of the best coach in the world. They're certainly certainly the best defence coach in the world based on what he achieved with South Africa and what he's doing here, and the energy that he's bringing to it, and the way the players have bought in and the way they speak about him. I think Blindell is starting to put his stamp on it as well. And we talked to Jordie Barrett last week, and he was saying having Tyler there, he was his coach at the Hurricanes. He runs a very similar system, so that helps what Ian talked about as he's come into a system that he's already familiar with because he worked with the attack coach back in New Zealand. So they're aligned. There's a unity of purposes and alignment. You can see it from 1 to squad member 50 or 60. They're all bought into the same system, the same goal, and it's so formidable. Whereas I'm sure Andy Farrell will get Ireland back on track once he's back in November, but this year has been a bit of a lost year in some ways because it's been so disparate. So that's one of the things that's weakened Ireland.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that's Leinster. We'll be back to them regularly in the knockout stages, I suspect, across the rest of the season. Let's turn to Munster then on the Saturday, who once again had to go to the south of France, and it was just one trip too many, really. Bordeaux 47, Munster 29. In truth, this game looked ominous early on, like 6 minutes in when Tucker Abrahams shoots up and Penhouse sprints in behind and they score that early try. It's panic stations. By 13 minutes, the Luku try, it's 15-3. 22 minutes, it's 22-3. Nankiville did score before halftime, it's 29-10. But really, halftime, this felt done. It just did. Bordeaux looked a notch above La Rochelle and Munster. Munster's line-out malfunctioned terribly. They lost 9 of 21. They had more rucks, more possession, more carries, more metres. Munster, this is, more passes, more line breaks, or similar line breaks, about a dozen apiece. But with the ball, Bordeaux were frightening. Munster were not as frightening. They averaged Bordeaux 4 points for every entry into the 22. Munster more kind of averaging 2. And Bordeaux did a number on Munster at the breakdown. 9 turnovers to 2. Might remember last week, Munster did a number on La Rochelle at the breakdown. Not this week. So there's some of the headline stats, Ian. This was just a notch above for Munster. Bordeaux are just at a different level to Munster, and that was just borne out. And without like the build-up that they had for La Rochelle, where it was like weeks of planning and the ambush and the travel and the adrenaline, Munster, it suddenly became apparent early on they don't have a chance here. They just weren't at that level realistically.
Yeah, the back-to-back weeks of having to go to France really told, and that turnover stat of 9 turnovers to 2. That is just a bit of mental fatigue. You're just a bit behind the jump. Your reactions aren't as sharp as they should be and they need to be. And the way it is at the breakdown now, that results in turnovers. The line-out stat of 9 from 21, it was where the ones were lost. That was a killer. Like, they did actually get good opportunities in the first half. Not quite on the 5 meter line, but there was plenty 15 meters out from, and they just couldn't win the line-out ball. And they had to work so hard to get in those positions that you have to win that line-out ball. And that's when Munster, get a stranglehold on teams and they go, right, we're going to go 20 phases here, 25 phases. We're going to make you work really hard, use up loads of petrol, probably get a penalty of some sort. And Casey, Casey and Crowley are Munster's best players now. And that's his strength. When he gets into the opposition 22, he's challenging those first and second defenders. He just wasn't able to do that because they didn't have the possession in there. And then, look, the stats are also skewed because Munster turned it on in the last 20 minutes, but the game was largely gone at that stage. For me, look, the lack of speed hurts Munster. And I know we spoke about the Gruber kick leading up to the French-Irish match. We saw it in this game. The Gruber kick through for Penno. There was another one where Wycherley kind of slips, but it's creating chaos. And Munster, while Abrahams is quick and is a good signing. We haven't seen a whole lot of him this year, but when we have, he's been really exciting. But they need more speed to back him up. And then in the front row, I think at hooker, like you think back to the amazing hookers Munster have had in previous years, the likes of Flannery and stuff leading from the front. It is a really important position for them. But yeah, look, it was disappointing, but I think they were undone by having to go away from home. And you can argue the format of the competition, or you can also say, well, do better in the group stages.
Yeah, true. That point about the format does ring true, Rudd. I mean, be interesting to have seen this game as the last 16 game. Same lead-in time, same conditions as the La Rochelle one. Then we might have had more of a game. We would have had more of a game for sure.
Yes, but Bordeaux were a better team,
yeah,
and a better squad, and I would have taken something. Certainly, like if you drop Munster into the top 14, you're looking at them finish 9th, 10th, 11th, keeping their head above water, and that's the challenge that they were faced with this week, was to go play 2 top 14 teams away from home in the space of 7 days, and they're not at the level to take on a team that are top 2, top 14, a real genuine contender for this tournament. They Ian's point about the groups, like this is self-inflicted to a degree. They Cast were a team they could have taken away from home, and they mangled that opportunity. You beat Cast away from home, you put yourself in a different trajectory. You get a home last 16 game, maybe even a home quarter final, and that 7-day turnaround suddenly isn't so bad because you're sleeping in your own bed on the nights in between. You're not having to travel. You have the backing of your Thomond Park support. So they've got to be I completely accepted the 7-day turnaround and the return to France to face one of the top seeds was the top seed in the tournament was a really big ask, but they have to be ruthless in their analysis of this. Why, they can never be in a situation again where their forwards coach is somewhere else on the day of a big game. They can't have a line out this bad when it matters. Like when it comes to the URC run-in, which is the first step of success in next year's Champions Cup, is winning or finishing in the top 2 of the URC, because that gets you a high seeding for next year's Champions Cup, gets you a better draw. Then you don't mangle they need to look at their S&C. Why are there so many players injured through the season? They have made big strides in terms of recruiting Lee Barron and Michael Milne, who'll bulk up that tight 5. They have got Dan Kelly coming into the midfield, a really good player. They need to get Dermot Kilgallen's a really good winger. They need to get back him on the pitch. He's missed most of the season with injury. So is Abrahams. They need to look at their S&C. They need to look at their medical department. Why are so many players missing so much of the season?
That seems to have leaked out to have been an aspect of disagreement with the Roundtree and other people in the on the ticket. There's a dynamic there.
Methods.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to like ultimately they haven't set themselves up to succeed this season because they changed coaches after 5 games, and now they're operating with people double jobbing. And when it comes to it against someone like Bordeaux, it's not good enough to succeed, and that's not to give the players a pass, but. Andrew Smith comes into the setup because of an injury crisis. Comes in 3-4 weeks ago. He was brilliant in La Rochelle. Did get yellow card, but I thought he struggled a little bit in defence against some of the best wingers in the world on Saturday. But you're bringing a guy 3 or 4 weeks before a Champions Cup game, and he's starting the quarter final. That's not good long term planning. And sometimes you have to make this stuff work. But you compare it to the structure Leinster have and how they're able to drop people in and out. So they've got McMillan coming, really highly regarded, really good opportunity for Munster to reset this summer. Finish this season strong first because it's there for them, the URC, not necessarily winning it because I don't think Leinster are going to let it slip this year either, but get a really good finish to the season, a bit of momentum, which they had coming out of the last 2 seasons, but this time capitalise on it and don't leave it till March and April to get your act together. They need to be stronger for the entire year, and they got to put so much resources into that line out, into those errors, and just not being as loose as they were in Bordeaux, because you're never going to beat a team like Bordeaux away from home with those kind of errors. Yeah,
that's a pretty good summary. Ian, anything else on Munster? Because they are looking to bridge this gap to the elite of this competition, and they are a bit away. You mentioned speed. Rory's mentioned a couple of other issues which all ring true. Do you see them as is this bridgeable in a season? This time next year, are we looking at Munster with the ability to go far deeper in this competition than they have over the last decade?
Yeah, it is bridgeable. I think were they playing, if they were playing Bordeaux fresh, could they beat them? Absolutely they could. Like the gap between those two teams that we saw at the weekend isn't as big as the scoreboard showed after 60 minutes, for example.
Okay.
I think it's very important that like Munster season's back trending to the right. That's what we want. They have a good run in the URC, the Bulls, starting with the Bulls this week. They can get fourth place. Fourth place for me, they should be making. They'll win the quarterfinal and then at home, and they'll contest possibly Leinster. I'd imagine then. That's a successful season. Semi-finals, quarterfinal of the Heineken Cup, considering where they were even 5 weeks ago, when you're kind of going, geez, Munster are at danger of not making top 8 here.
Yeah.
A fourth seeding gives them a chance with how the rankings work, as Rudd mentioned there, for next season to get a slightly easier group. And then, we know how important it is to have home games in the knockout stages of the URC and the European Cup. That's crucial.
Just before we move to Connacht and Challenge Cup, in the Champions Cup, Toulouse beat Toulon in the end. I know you thought Toulon would give them a good game, if not beat them. I mean, Ramos kicked a penalty to win the game 21-18, and he hadn't been having a good kicking game that afternoon, but he got it done when it mattered. So Toulouse, Bordeaux, why is it you reckon Bordeaux will pip Toulouse here? Toulouse have fallen back even just beyond the Dupont loss, is it?
Yeah, like they still have good strengths across the team. Miafu in particular was phenomenal against Toulon. It was just, he looked like he was over age as well, as Rudd would say. The impact of losing Dupont and even Capuozzo on the wing, real speed, that was a big loss for them against, got injured at the end of the Sale game. But yeah, like the obvious with Dupont is, his pass is faster. He's a far better kicker than any other 9. He's really physical, his ability to come up with big moments. But for me, it's actually like his ability, because he just commands so much attention from the opposition defense, that results in more space for the forwards to run into. And that creates soft shoulders. And that's actually the foundation of Toulouse's attacking game. It's their offloading game. Soft shoulder, they win the contact, they keep the ball alive, they're in behind. And when big guys like Rumat and Miafu get in behind, they flood through. They're kind of in this train formation where it looks effortless, and it is to them because that's what they practice the most. And you take away Dupont and they just struggle to get over and through that initial part of the gain line. They did it on a few occasions, but for me, Toulon should have won that game. The big moment came when Baptiste Saran made a high tackle. Wasn't a whole lot of head contact, but look, letter of the law, it is a yellow card. And then Toulouse scored 2 tries on a wet day. Toulon just couldn't quite get their noses back ahead, and it was a coin toss towards the end then.
Okay. Let's turn to the Challenge Cup then. I sense a great frustration around Connacht, even though the scoreline looks very reasonable and justifiable in terms of performance. 43 points to 40 defeat to Racing 92. It's when you go beneath the surface, really, you realise the frustration is very warranted. Racing down to 14 men after just 13 minutes. So what? That's 67 minutes with 14 men. Connacht 21-5 up in that first half. Collie Tucker afterwards said Racing were deserved winners. I didn't think we played especially well. Too inaccurate. We couldn't get our hands on the ball. And this was their kind of way to save their season, a la Arsenal in the Champions League almost, because the URC table is not pretty. They're 13th of 16, 5 wins, 9 defeats. Injury ravage now going down to South Africa to take on the Stormers and the Lions. Mac Hansen and Bundy Aki very much included. I think 6 players ruled out. I don't know. They're just rudderless here. A little unfortunate that their head coach obviously is out with ill health, and you obviously wish everyone there concerned all the best. But Connacht are going nowhere here on the pitch. All the verve and direction is off the pitch. Everything they're doing, they're brilliant. But we have to talk about this. This is really bad. Yeah,
Ireland is too small to not have all of the constituent parts pulling in the right direction and thriving and performing. And right now, Connacht are not performing as a province, and that's at a point where they're about to move into you can see the stand is almost done when you're watching the game, and the potential of the organisation was laid clear a couple of weeks ago in McHale Park. They plans to move potentially this game to Salt Hill to get a big crowd again, just a bit of good vibrations behind it all and kind of open it up to a new audience, and it's an opportunity massively missed. And it's symptomatic. I think it's generous to compare them to Arsenal. I think it's more like Man United in the Europa League, trying to salvage something from a complete car crash of a season. Like, we can't expect too much of Connacht. They are probably the smallest budget of the 4 provinces. They are in a bit of transition because the stadium is being redeveloped. But, you know, I know Pete Wilkins is on sick leave, but there's also a lot of change happening with Rod Saib coming in next season. We don't know what role Wilkins will have, whether it will be as a head coach or whether he'll be more of a defence coach. What implications that has on the rest of the coaches. We know Mark Sexton is heading to Ulster next season. We believe Scott Fardy, who has presided over a pretty porous defence for the last 2 seasons, he's going to move on. It just hasn't been a good couple of years since Andy Friend left, because they were very competitive under Andy Friend.
Is that about the fair marker for the team with the smallest budget? Because to your very fair point that we have to judge them in that context, to what extent are they underperforming here?
Well, you still got to, their head coach said, or interim, one of the interim coaches said that we didn't play well tonight. I mean, you expect them to play well. If Racing come locked and loaded with Owen Farrell and you're rolling Owen Farrell and Roman Taufifenua off the bench, and with 15 players wipe the floor clean with Connacht, or even beat them in a close game in that way, where Connacht could have counted themselves, absolutely fair play. That's fair enough. But a home game against 14 men for that long, and when you were, what was it, 21-5 when the red card happened, and they got, they exchanged scores, so they kind of managed the score for a good bit of it, but like, their breakdown was shocking. Their maul was really poor. Defensive maul, they had to pick 2 big units in the second row. They still got bullied at the maul. Again, like Munster, like physical profile, player profile, they're not top 14 players, so you are struggling against someone like Racing, but against 14 at home with the opportunity that was there, you at least expect a performance that justifies that gives a representation of what you want to put out there, and I don't think they did. Now, Racing were very good, and I thought Nolan Le Garrett in particular, like La Rochelle, have some player on the way, but still, that's it's really, really damaging.
Yeah. In Connacht, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I felt for them on the weekend. I was down there doing commentary with Gavin Duffy, and there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening down there. The redevelopment of the stadium is far more than just a stadium. New training facility, proper place for fans to enjoy the match day experience. It's going to create a kind of community around there. This was an important game to build momentum going into next season. If you're looking to sell season tickets, being in the Champions Cup helps. Having knockout games in the URC also helps. But yeah, like they actually played really nice rugby in the first half. Their attack was the best I've seen them attack all season. Just moved the ball really nicely. Hansen was playing fullback and he was getting in at second set of hands, and they just couldn't get their hands on him. And they fully deserved that 21-5 lead. The Tracy incident where it was a red card all day, it was really poor technique from the Racing winger. But the knock-on impact from that for Connacht was Tracy goes off with a HIA. Okay. Doesn't come back. It was a serious collision, and Ioane comes on, gets injured nearly immediately. They move Hugh Gavin to the wing, who's really a centre. He then gets injured, so you're left with like Devine, who's a young scrum half and a brilliant up and coming scrum half at that, but he doesn't know the nuances of covering the backfield. Sure. And that left Hansen very much alone at the back, who in a way has limited enough experience at fullback to be able to manage that. Hansen picked up an injury in the second half and he was limping around. Now I don't know what the injury was, and I don't like speculating, but I know he wasn't moving as well as he was in the first half. But at 21-5 up, I was thinking, and look, Racing were dreadful. They hadn't got off the bus. They were appalling. And Racing have really struggled this season. And one of the reasons I think for that is they have so many weapons across their squad. They've got speed, they've got power, they've got height. They can play so many different ways. And they just haven't been able to pick which way they should play to beat teams. And because of the red card, they had to pick a way to play. They had to go to a power game, and they had to play short side attack. And it suited them because they have a fantastic 9 in Le Garrett, who just picked off the Connacht defenders. When it wasn't on, they went one-on-one in the tackle, and they were so explosive. Demba Bamba was back to his very best. He's obviously played for France. multiple occasions. I think he's played for France that recently, but he was unbelievable. At the weekend, you had Tofa Fanua coming off the bench, another French international. And then the game's still in the balance, and you've got Lyons out half, Owen Farrell coming on, and he just kept the ball in front of Racing, which is what you've got to do with the big pack. But sorry, back to my original point. At 21-5 up with a red card, I turned to Gavin Duffy, and I took my headphones off. I said, they've got to kill them now. Don't give a sucker a chance. And had Connacht got one more try and got it to 26 or 28-5. I don't think Racing even bothered trying to get themselves back into the game.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They let them get a soft try out of nowhere into the wind. And then before you know it, it's in an arm wrestle. The Racing guys get together at halftime and go, you know what? Let's go win this game. And that's how crazy it is in France. And they'll probably go on and win that competition now. I think they probably will.
It sounds, when you lay out the injuries, there's quite a lot of mitigation there. That sounds like you wouldn't be as down on the performance.
No, like the attack, I was really excited by their attack. And look, I know Mark Sexton's going up north, and I think he'll have a big impact up there. But the attack was really fluid, and it was what I liked. What it was, it fitted it nicely into how Racing defend. They're big bodies; they want to get forward. So Connacht went to this really clever, tight shapes, tipping inside and outside, but running really hard angles back into the seams. And the Racing big bodies, they just couldn't move laterally well enough to cope with it. And they were just running through with abandon in the first half.
So I suppose then we're back to a familiar theme, which is, if I said to you pre-game, Racing will have 14 men from the 13th minute and Connacht will score 40 points. And I'm not going to tell you what Racing score. You'd say... Yeah. That sounds like a pretty good, against 14 men for 67 minutes, and we're at 40 points. Okay, deal. That's the inexplicable part. You can't concede 43 in those circumstances.
No, you can't. But saying that, it's not like Connacht didn't show heart. Okay. They do, and like I'm not mad on this like salary cap stuff, but I'm going to use it in this instance. The salary cap difference between those two teams, it could be 10 million.
Okay,
it's significant.
Yeah.
And just the sheer quality they had coming off the bench, and the inexperience that Connacht had in the backline with those multiple changes, they just weren't able to get it back together again. But look, they've the bones of a really good team there. Like up front, they've really experienced front row. Finley's obviously world class. Good second rows with like Josh and Joycey, and Jansen's really stepped up in the last few weeks. I've been very impressed with him, and he is Irish qualified. Could they bring him on tour? Probably not. There's so much quality in the Irish back row, but he offers something different. He's a real power athlete. That
Ian's analysis there, very fair. Get the coaching ticket sorted out. I feel a lot more optimistic than I did 8 minutes ago.
I think in isolation, this game, you put these two teams in a game week on week. Racing have a much stronger squad and a much stronger team and a much bigger budget. And if you gave the Racing coach free rein, to, as I said earlier, to sign Connacht players, he's going to pick off the Ireland internationals, and he's probably going to leave the rest. That's the reality where these two teams are. But what we've become accustomed to in Irish rugby over the years is that the Irish teams, when they're well organised, well coached, and they're all aligned with that kind of unity of purpose, they can perform above the sum of their parts, and they can take down a French heavy hitter. And when they are playing against a team like Racing, who are in the middle of a kind of a middling season and didn't start particularly well, and they go down to 14 men, then you kind of expect the Irish team to go on and do it. And I thought Racing went to another level within the game, and it bodes well for their future. But it's more the context of Connacht season, because I've seen Connacht. I was at the first game of the season where Connacht ripped Munster to shreds but lost the game. And we've seen over in the Ospreys a couple of weeks ago, they scored 40 points away from home and lost the game. McHale Park, big, massive occasion, attacked really well at times, lost the game. So there is a trend there and the worry would be is that Mark Sexton is leaving. So the best part of their game, the attack coach is leaving. Now they're bringing in a very highly rated attack coach for next season. There's a bit like Munster, a chance for a reset. Yeah. And I think Jansen will go on the summer tour, and I think he started for Ireland A in the game in Bristol a couple of weeks ago. I think he's one that's on Ireland's radar. They've got Shane Bolton, who's currently injured, really good player. They have good players. Cordero's been a big disappointment. He's a big marquee overseas signing, hasn't delivered for them at all. There's a chance for a reboot, and they've been in this position before. more exciting and what's different now is that the stadium's pretty much ready for next season. I think it's going to be a couple of weeks in before they can play there. But there's a real sense that the organisation's moving in the right direction and the potential is huge. And there's a chance to go maybe to Markievicz Park and play a game and go back to McHale Park and bring the province with them. And you just need the Pat Lam figure there to kind of bring it all together and get these players playing above themselves. And right now, their scrum coach is the head coach, and the head coach isn't there because he's ill, but we don't know if he's going to be there next season, and there's new people coming in. It's just not... It's not high performance.
Yeah, they're actually doing the hard stuff.
Yeah,
quite well.
Yeah.
And then the two easiest fixes I see are like their kick strategy for me needs work. They don't kick the ball a huge amount, and when they kick it, they don't kick it effectively enough, and they're not organized enough in their kick chase. And then defense, the defense isn't connected enough. And like whoever comes in there should have some easy wins.
I was just going to say that is low hanging fruit to fix.
Yeah, big time.
You were doing commentary of the Leinster game, the Connacht game, and the Toulon game. You were talking a lot about scrums. Now, I'll be honest, I don't tune in to hear you talk about scrums.
I made a conscious effort to try and talk about it a bit more. It was really off the back of David Flatman. He was on the touchline for one of the Premiership games. Bath were playing. And look, I'm never going to describe it as intricately or as beautifully as he did. But it's a huge part of the game. And I think it's when it's poor conditions, which it was in Toulon and Toulouse, the scrum is going to have a big weighting to the winning team. So I definitely got into the habit of saying, oh, this isn't my area of expertise. But I've seen enough scrums. I need to try and start, explaining what I'm seeing. I'm going to get it wrong, and I'm starting off that journey a bit younger, but Flats was actually helping me out on it. So we'll see some improvement hopefully next week. But look, it is actually a fascinating part of the game. Like the detail he goes into when he's explaining it. And you talk about habits of players. That's what I would be looking at from a centre, how they defend. This is his habit. He bites in. He would be talking about a loose head, and his habit when he gets tired is or a tight head is to go around the outside and force his way back in, or he drops his bind, or when he gets tired, he tries to buy a penalty by not taking the hit. So it's stuff like that that you can kind of realize and then go, oh, I'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I tried to predict a few and got a couple wrong in the Toulouse game, but sure, look, that's the way it goes.
Well, it's a bit like pronouncing a foreign name. If you just do it with confidence, nobody at home will know that you're wrong. Ian. This is the great thing about scrums, Oh, that was Porter. Yeah, came in at the side. So he's all wrong there. Just a lot of confidence, and I'll buy it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Just be compelling.
Any other business then from that European weekend?
Not a lot. Like it's shaping up. I'd say this is the top four we probably expected from when we saw the last 16. I kind of expected Munster to lose in La Rochelle, but I always expected Bordeaux to win that quarter final. So we're getting to the meat of it all. It was a fairly straightforward. The game in France yesterday was the only one that was a real proper compelling contest. I know Munster, reverse engineered a tight finish, but they were kind of blown away and I think we're going to see two very good semi-finals. I do think Northampton, Ian was talking about them earlier, like even the fact that they have the most exciting young player in England and he knows it, Henry Pollock, and he is going to come over. I'd say Leinster would love to put him back in his box a bit, and I'd say he'll want to come over and make a line statement and also just make a statement to the whole of Europe about what he's about, because he looks like a serious talent, and he's got the English media love him, and he's getting all the love from them. So that's going to be a bit of a narrative over the next couple of weeks of him against this Leinster team. And Josh van der Fleer will want to kind of put him in his place a little bit in as polite a way as Josh van der Fleer always would. So that's going to be a nice game to build towards. And that all-French semi, what did Toulouse put on Bordeaux in the final last year? Was it 64 points, 67 points? Toulouse absolutely hammered them in a top 14 final last year.
Yeah.
So
we'll shout it on my air 59.
59, and they beat them in the semi as well. So there's the Harlequins took them out along the way in Europe, but Bordeaux have a point to prove in that fixture. So we're going to get, like the last couple of years, when it gets to these last four, this is when it's going to be good.
It gets good. Okay.